in the middle of a holiday. As if the holidays weren't enough, we've got more. But wait, there's more. So here we are, and I am actually making this service happen from the sukkah of my house on Elgin Street in Los Angeles. And we will start. I need to put my talit on. And I want to thank our co-hosts for tonight, namely Elaine and Doug White. And anybody else, I think those are the two. So let me just put on my talit since I'm the shaliach tzibor, or the service leader. And it's going to be a little less tight. Let's just put it that way, because I'm in a sukkah outside with no air conditioning. And the lights are blaring in my face because I'm not very good at lighting. But it doesn't matter, because v'samachta b'chagecha v'hayita ach sameach. You shall be joyous in your holiday, and you shall be only happy. That is this holiday. So I'm realizing I also need to pull something up. I'm just a little bit behind here. So are we fully muted? We don't need to be just yet.
Oh, I'm muting people. If you don't want them muted, then people go ahead and unmute yourself.
I'm talking only because I got to pull up my Sukkot Shabbat outline, which has all the links in it.
Okay, people, you have to unmute yourselves now because I went ahead and did it. So never mind.
Too efficient.
Too efficient. That's
Yeah.
I got these really silly solar flickering lights that look really
isn't that pretty?
They look tacky in the day, but look
Who
how
has
fit they are.
those?
Karen, where did you get those?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I got them online and they were cheap and they look like totally tacky in the daytime, but at night they're like these little magical things. I put them all around the pool and under my pergola. Oh, and I got these little sparkly lights.
That's what I was talking about, Rabbi, something like that.
I think
they
that
were
it is
totally cheapo, but they look pretty at night. And now Penny wants in. I'll be right back.
Boy, I like those. I'm going to look for those.
they remind me of stained glass.
Yeah, they do. Don't they look pretty?
Oh, my goodness.
Andy, you're underground.
Okay.
I'm underground until Groundhog Day.
Okay.
I'm pretending my pergola is a sukkah. It's not proper, but you know, it's outside and
Karen, those lights remind me of stained glass.
They do. If you saw them up close in the daylight, you'd just start laughing because they're just this cheap plastic. But they look so magical at night. It's really cool. So.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to mute everybody and we're going to actually begin our service. And to let you know, this we're going to start with this as a nigun. These words, v'samachta b'chagecha, are from the book of Deuteronomy, as it says here, and it really is the mitzvah of this holiday. It is sort of the whole point of this holiday is we call Sukkot Zman Simchatenu, which means the season of our joy. And the melody, so I'm going to teach it first as a melody, and then we'll go. And I never find a good key for this. Okay, here we go. Try this. We'll do it as a nigun, which means we won't have the words at first. we'll do it with the word Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Umevorach. 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 V'samachta b'chagecha v'hayita b'ch sameach. V'samachta v'hayita b'chagecha v'hayita b'ch sameach. V'samachta b'chagecha v'hayita b'ch sameach. V'samachta b'chagecha v'hayita b'ch sameach. Shabbat Shalom to everyone. I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to turn off original sound because that probably will be better. Oh no, I'm supposed to turn it off. Okay, yeah, it's on right now. Okay, so it is Sukkot. Sukkot, which means that if you look up in the sky, you're going to find a bright moon, because it is always always the full moon on the 15th of the Hebrew month of Tishrei, which is 15 days to the day after Rosh Hashanah. It's always that way. It's never not that way. And it's a day of great joy. It's a week of great joy. As I wrote, it's a holiday in which we dwell in a sukkah like I am. And I will be saying a blessing for this at the very end when I lead Kiddush as well on behalf of the whole congregation. But just a couple of words. We have shifted our learning program tomorrow to 6 p.m. instead of the 4 p.m. that we had before. So we will be learning by Zoom at this address at 4 o'clock tomorrow. I'm sorry, 6 o'clock tomorrow, followed by not Havdalah. Why not Havdalah? Well, because this holiday is considered in some communities a 2-day holiday. But we'll talk about a special blessing that's stated on in lieu of Havdalah. So if you want to show up at 7 o'clock, we're still going to get together and have a meaningful experience together. We will also, this Sunday, I believe, religious school is meeting. And would someone like to say a word about our sisterhood event on Sunday as well? Maybe Kathleen as our president. Would you be the person, or?
I'm going to say if Mary Ann would like to speak. She is our vice president and has been working with Pamela Elishiva, and we have a wonderful event coming up. Mary Ann, yeah.
So yes, Kathleen, so on Sunday, thank you, Rabbi, on Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m., we are going to have our very excited to say, our very third cooking class, started by Pamela. And Pamela, if you could chime in, I don't know if you're here, if you could tell us about the second, tell us about, real quickly, just your cooking recipe, and then our lovely guest that we have on Sunday as well.
Well, the recipe that I'm cooking is shakshuka, because this is the time of Sukkot and we have sukkahs. So I was making shakshuka for the sukkah is what I'm going to be making. And that's following a Jewish National Fund recipe. And then we have the wonderful substitution last minute of Barbara Kessler, who is going to be making her mom's mandelbrot. And that should be exciting. Her mom is Rose Blatt. So maybe some of you know Rose, and certainly some of you know Barbara, but it should be a great recipe, especially this time of sitting around and noshing. Thanks.
So, Rabbi, I just want to add, these two lovely women, Marianne and Pamela, have been working very hard together, scheduling our classes, and there's more to come, folks. So keep watching for our very special chefs program. Thank you both, Pamela and Marianne.
Well, we're going to come back to Marianne in a moment when we light our candles. But I want to take a moment now to also see if there are newcomers who would be willing to just introduce themselves before we go further. So I know Olivia is here, and I want to have the opportunity for Olivia to unmute and say hello, because we've tried to do this a couple of times and we've just missed each time. So Olivia, do you want to just tell us who you are, and maybe in a sentence? You don't have to take too much time. Don't worry. Not too much.
I don't know. I'm Olivia. It's nice to see all of you, and I'm happy to be joining you for the service.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you're a Bakersfield native, I know that.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually went to preschool at Bright Beginning, so that was cool. Yeah, I don't really know what to say.
Oh, that's wonderful. I didn't know that.
Mm.
That's great. Thank you for introducing yourself. Does anybody else who's relatively new want to introduce? Oh, David's waving his hand. I don't. He's like, no, not me. Well, David, you're not a newcomer, David Greenfield, but regardless.
David Greenfield.
What's that?
I'm a lurker. I lurk on the side and participate and watch.
You're at the heart of it all, my friend. I am so grateful for you. Okay, and then does anybody else want to introduce themselves? I don't want to put anyone on the spot. Only Olivia. Anyone else? Okay, it's fine. Oh, Vivian, are you waving your hand?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I can barely hear you. I can hear everybody else, but I can barely hear you.
Really? Is it breaking up, or is it?
No, it's just very soft. I don't know if I'm the only one, but.
Are others having a hard time hearing me?
You're a little softer, yes.
Rabbi, I think you need to get a little closer to the microphone. That's the problem.
Well, I'll see what I can do. And I'll just talk a lot louder and a lot more directly at wherever the microphone is. Unfortunately, I don't even know where it is on this laptop. So we'll make do. I apologize, everybody. Anyone else want to introduce themselves before we move on? Well,
hi everyone. Sorry for the delay, Rabbi. It's bedtime. I'm Sarah Maherter. I'm in Bakersfield, and this is Lennon.
Hi.
Shabbat shalom. Oh, good job. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for joining us too. That's wonderful.
Welcome.
Okay. I think we're ready to go. And so let's move now actually to Marianne, who has agreed to light our Shabbat candles. So I will highlight her. Oh, and I should post the link for the prayer book. So let me find it. And I will do that. Why is it not working? Oh, I know what I need to do. I'm sorry, everybody. Just too many moving parts in this holiday. Here we go. Let me go to the chat, and I will post our link for the prayer book. And we will be on page 3 in a moment. And what I'll do is I'll actually load it on my machine as well for this service and share my screen. There we go. And Marianne, you should unmute yourself. Are you able to see that, Marianne? Okay, you are still muted.
go.
There we go.
As these Shabbat candles give us light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us, as their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light. So may we, in our own way, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
Baruch.
Yeah, let's sing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. The words are a little different. Lehadlik ner Shel Shabbat v'Shel Yom Tov. Thank you so much. Some people recite a Shehechianu at this point, but I think that we'll wait until later when I say a blessing for the lighting of the, for sitting in a sukkah. We'll do it then. But I want to thank you, Marianne, for all your leadership and service and warmth. So thank you. I'm going to unspotlight, and we're going to move on to page 9, and I want to welcome Elaine to read the reading. Elaine and Doug, actually, on page 9.
Okay. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain.
On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share.
There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted.
On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation.
There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others.
On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal.
So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace.
Thank you. We turn now to page 358. Maybe I'll share screen so everyone can see it. And we mentioned that we had a really wonderful discussion in the middle of our high holiday services on Yom Kippur about the fact that in some ways Rosh Hashanah does not, or the season of repentance does not end on Yom Kippur. We have this idea that actually it continues. Whoops. It goes on in the form of these flip books are really something. It goes on in the form of us continuing to recite Psalm 27, which we have been singing together. Achat sha'alti met Adonai ota vakesh. Achat sha'alti met Adonai ota vakesh. Shiti b'vet Adonai kol yemei chayai. Levaker behechalo lachazo benoam benoam Adonai ulevaker behechalo. Thank you. And without further ado, we go straight to page 20 for Lecha Dodi, page 20. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, hishmi'anu el hamiuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shem u'tiferet v'tila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor habracha, merosh mikedem lesucha. Sof ma'aseh b'machshava tefila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, hitoreri, ki ba'orech kumi ori, uri uri shir daberi. Kevod Adonai alayim nigla. Lecha Dodi Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom aderet kala, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואו חלה, בואו חלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, ב'נei Shabbat nekabela. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ב'nei Shabbat nekabela. We did not take a moment to wish each other a Shabbat Shalom in the chat window, though a couple of people did do that. I'd like us to take a moment before we finish our Kabbalat Shabbat and go into the next section for us to wish each other a Shabbat Shalom. And if you want to add words for me to say out loud, I'm happy to share them. Just type them into the chat window, and that would be lovely. A little out of order, but we call this lemafria, sort of out of order. But this is what happens when you're in a sukkah. I mean, if anyone knows anything about life with a sukkah, you're guaranteed to break things. You're guaranteed to have things turn upside down. You're guaranteed to spill things. Thank you, Hillary. Yes, Shabbat Shalom to you. And Mary Helen says, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Keep safe and healthy. Lovely. Yes. And David Greenfield wishes a Shabbat Shalom v'Chag Sameach. And Kathleen is happy to have a friend here. And Carla also wishes everyone Shabbat Shalom. This is a lovely thing. So, oh, and we have someone in the waiting room. Okay. Yes. And Marsha Parr says, welcome to everyone, old and new. And Mark, I had a lovely time with you. Chag Sameach to all. First call is made for Sukkot. Yes. Pamela and Irvin wishing everyone Chag Sameach. And Hillary, thank you for joining us again. So glad, and it was nice to talk to you a little bit in the chat beforehand. So here we are. We can continue now with Chatzi Kaddish. Oh, and Mike and Judy wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom as well. We continue with Chatzi Kaddish, which can be found on page 26, and then we'll continue right into Baruch Hu, page 26. Okay. Yitkada v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah ve'alma divrachute v'yamlich malchute b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach Le'alam ula'al me'almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromvam yidnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei tekudisha b'richu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata ta'amiram be'alma V'imru, amen. Please rise. Are people able to hear me enough to be able to follow along at least? Okay, good. Well, I want to welcome now Addison Gartenlaub to lead us on page 30 with Ma'ariv Aravim, and we'll highlight her if I can find her on the screen. Oh, good.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam. Sorry. Sorry, okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher biparo ma'ariv aravim v'chochma poteach sha'arim u'bitmuna meshane itim ומחליף את הזמנים ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם במשמרותיכם ברקיע בורא יום ולילה גולל אור מפני חושך וחושך מפני אור ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים.
Thank you, Addison. We continue on page 32. I just made a change in the setting on my computer, so if for some reason it sounds better, let me know. If it sounds worse, privately, let me know. We say that God is a loving God, that out of love, God gave us Torah, which is to say that God gave us a blueprint to make life meaningful and create a fair society for all. That's what it means. In contrast with other traditions that say that out of love, God loved us, that God gave us some sort of other deity. Our belief, as found in this prayer, is that out of love, we are able to have a way to survive in this world and to create a stable society, namely Torah. Which is, of course, a prayer for all of us. Ahavat Olam et Yisrael Am Tavta Torah u'mitzvot u'mishpatim otanu limadeta Ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shofteinu u'meinu la'asiyach bechukecha ונשמח בדברי תורתך ומצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגה יומם ולילה נגה יומם ולילה ועבדך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני עולמו ישראל Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam The Ahafta can be found on page 36. ואהבת את asher anochi etzavcha hayom al levavecha yadai yadai Veshinan tam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha lechtecha b'adeveh shochbecha u'kumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha ve'hayu letotam b'pneinecha u'ktama all mezuzot beitecha all mezuzot beitecha u'misharecha yadai 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 Leman tizkeru v'asitem kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim leloechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim v'yolachem Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem. On page 38, all this we hold to be true and trustworthy for us. You alone are our God, and we are Israel, your people. You are our sovereign and savior, and who delivers us from the oppressor's hands and saves us from tyrants' fists. You work wonders without number, marvels beyond count. You give us life and steady our footsteps. You performed miracles for us before Pharaoh, signs and wonders in the land of the Egyptians. You led your people Israel out from their midst to freedom for all time. When your children witnessed your dominance, they praised your name in gratitude, and they accepted your sovereignty. Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang to you together, lifting their voices joyously. Page 40. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Nora tehilot o sefele, nora tehilot o sefele. Malchutecha ra'u vanecha, bokei ayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, zeli anu ve'amru Adonai, Adonai yimloch, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. V'ne'emar ki fara Adonai et Yaakov, ga'alo mi'ev chazak mimenu, baruch atah Adonai, gal Yisrael. On page 42, you can also find the words actually on page 360. And since we'll be looking at two parts of page 360, I will share my screen and we'll join together. Moving from days of awe into our holidays. The last two songs, which are actually from this prayer, the Hashkivenu prayer. Ufro saleh, Now, I understand there's a Vishamru that the congregation has used. I think I tried it once before, but I think Ella, you shared this with me. I'm going to turn off the share screen. The Vishamru can be found on page 44. And in Gates of Song, it is song number 45. Veshameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lasot et ha-Shabbat dorotam berit olam beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti leolam leolam. Ki she'eshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim et haaretz uvayom hashvi'i shavavad vayinafash. We turn now to our standing prayer, our Amidah prayer. In the prayer books that you have, and the only books that I think I have available for you, you have the liturgy that is our Amidah for Shabbat, regular Shabbat. But this Shabbat is a little different. We have a slightly different liturgy. If you happen to be someone who has a copy of this version, it's a thicker version of Mishkan Tefillah, you can find it. So this is our regular one, which is just for Shabbat. This one does not only include Shabbat, it also includes weekday. So in that book, you can find it on page 468. But I want to encourage you to remember that our tradition is that these are the words on the page, but we also have our own prayers that might be inside of us that we want to let out at this time, and that's the purpose of prayer. So please rise as we turn to the Amidah, which can be found again in the regular prayer books on page 46, or in this book on page 468. And I'll also say that the beginning of the prayer is the same, regardless of whether it's Shabbat or festival. It's the center that changes. So if you don't have the liturgy in front of you, it's okay. Just think about Sukkot as you say your prayers as well. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agitei matecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu v'Imoteinu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot U'Mevi Gula Livnei V'neihem L'ma'an Shemo V'Ahava Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magin Baruch Atah Adonai Magin Avraham Bezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayeh HaKol Atah Rav Lehoshia Morid Hatah Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed Mechayeh HaKol Berachamim Rabim Tomech Noflim Verofech Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Baal Geburot Umidom Melech Me'emit Mechayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman atah l'chayot Baruch atah Adonai Mechayeh HaKol Atah Kadosh V'Shimcha Kadosh U'Kadoshim B'chol Yom Yahalelucha Selah Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. We continue silently. Join me if you know this song. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. Let's repeat that. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rent, a time to sow, a time of love, a time of hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. So that song, why are we singing from the book of Ecclesiastes? I think it's chapter, I always forget if it's 3 or 4. I think it's chapter 3. Why do we, does anybody know? I'd like to open up our chat window and see. Actually, our chat window is open. So if anyone wants to raise their hand, actually, if they happen to know, why would we be reciting from the book of Ecclesiastes on this Friday night on Sukkot? Anybody know? If you're raising your hand and I can't see you, it's only because there's multiple screens. I see Pamela's hand is up. So Pamela, tell us, why do we read that?
Well, first of all, it's tradition to read this scroll on this holiday.
That's right.
And it's for a lot of us, it's apropos because it really is a shift in the seasons and things changing from one state to the next. And that's what that last song that we sang was all about, how things change.
Absolutely. And we'll be talking, and we'll actually be reading a portion of this next week as a book. The little tricky weird thing about it is that it's usually read on what's called Shabbat Chol HaMoed. That would be the Sabbath that is in the middle of the holiday of Sukkot. It turns out, I didn't know, when Shabbat is on Sukkot, that it's actually read outside of Sukkot. It's actually read on Shmini Atzeret, which is, we'll be talking about that in a minute as well. But the theme of this book of Ecclesiastes, also known in Hebrew as Kohelet, is really about the ephemerality of the world, the question about what is the meaning of life, what is the purpose of it all. And I think of this song, which comes from one of the middle chapters, I think there's 10 in total, really kind of speaks to the idea that actually there is this system in place. There is a structure, despite the way in which sometimes we don't always know what that structure is. It was said to have been written by King Solomon when he was an older man and a little frustrated with life, a little bit feeling like he did everything. He accumulated all sorts of wealth, but what does it all mean? That's sort of the theme. People will call this book pessimistic. I don't think of it as pessimistic. I think of it as a book that really asks us, what is this all about? And it's perhaps the deepest book of the Bible, in my opinion, because it really does force us to confront our mortality and to think about why we are so on this planet. And I think it's no mystery that it's just a couple of days after Yom Kippur. As mentioned before, we talked about how Yom Kippur was the end of the season of repentance, but we have this idea that actually the holiday continues beyond Yom Kippur. The focus on repentance goes beyond it. That's one reason we say Psalm 27, which we did earlier, that song, Achat Sha'alti. And here we have a song that also is talking about structure in a world where there's a time for this and there's a time for that, but sometimes we don't always see the structure. And I think that that's something that we struggle with as human beings, is how to see the organization when it feels so disorganized at times. And I think that's what Turn, Turn, Turn as a song is sort of about. And it's also a great song by Pete Seeger, one of the first songs I learned along the way on guitar and whatnot. And there's really two versions, and I kind of played a little bit of both in there. I hope that's okay for everyone. So I need to turn now. Speaking of turn, 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 I want to get us ready for our Torah service, which I have to find the link for. Pardon me. Oh, that's interesting. It's not letting me get to it. A little harder on Zoom in a sukkah. Do I want to open this? Yes, I do. Oh boy. I want to apologize, everyone. It's just not easy without a mouse trying to make Zoom services come together. If this was the audition, I'd be in pretty bad shape. But this is not an audition. This is davening. And as a community, we pray together. So this time, we will not have the Aliyah blessings before and after. I will read some Torah. Thank you, David. From the special Torah portion for Sukkot. The tradition is that we recite a passage from Leviticus for a number of holidays. that lists the various traditions of pilgrimage, and this is no different. So we turn to Leviticus chapter 22, verse 26. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, shor o chesef o ez yivaled, v'haya shivat yamim tachat imo, mi'umiyom hashmini v'hala, yeratzeh lekorban ishel Adonai, shor oseh o tovet beno, lo tishchatu bayom echad, ki tizbechu zevach todah l'Adonai, lirtzonchem tizbachu. Bayom hahu ye'achel, lo totiru mimenu ad boker, ani Adonai, ushmartam mitzvotai vasitem otam, ani Adonai, velo techalulu et shem kodshi, v'nikdashti b'toch b'nei Yisrael, ani Adonai mekadishchem. Hamotzi etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim, ani Adonai. And you'll see that the passage, I always do the first aliyah when we're together, and that first passage dealt with a number of offerings. But here we have, if you look at the Torah portion, it says these are the fixed times of God, and you shall proclaim them as sacred occasions. And it says there should be a Sabbath, and on the 14th, on the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at twilight, there shall be a Passover offering to God. The first month is the month of Aviv. That is not the month of Rosh Hashanah, the same month as Rosh Hashanah. So the month of Aviv, or Nisan, this is a reference to Pesach, which you might have known because it says Passover. And then on the 15th day of that month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So we see, oh boy, Zoom is not my friend today, that that the passage continues to describe the Passover offering. And then after the Passover offerings, it talks about a offering of the first sheaf of your harvest, and talks about all the elevating sheaves. And basically we go into the story of the counting of the Omer and the offerings that we bring. And the portion continues with offerings that you're supposed to give in the high temple, in the Beit HaMikdash, in the Mishkan, at the tabernacle. And it should be a sacred occasion. And basically, we then hear more in chapter 23. We continue with this in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, that there should be this Zichron, L'chol Shabbaton, Zichron Trua Mikra Kodesh, a day commemorated with loud shofar sounds. And you should not work. So that, as you might guess, is Rosh Hashanah. And then we have Yom Kippur mentioned in this parasha that's special for the holidays. And then guess what's going to come after Rosh Hashanah? And it says, by the way, here that you shall practice affliction. You shall afflict yourselves. It's actually up here. And it is the Day of Atonement on which expiation is made on your behalf. So there's a kapara, there's an atonement that is made to basically make you not guilty again. And the portion continues to describe what that looks like. And it says it's a Shabbat Shabbaton, Yom Kippur, is a special kind of a Sabbath. It's the holiday of Yom Kippur. And then here we are, finally, in verse 34. On the 15th day of this 7th month, there shall be a feast of booths, Chag HaSukkot, for 7 days. So we should have this holiday where we sit in booths like I am right now. And it should go for 7 days. that you shall bring offerings by fire to God, and on the 8th day you shall have another sacred occasion. That's the holiday of Shmini Atzeret. And anyway, it goes on, and it looks at all the holidays. And look at this. On the first day you shall take the product of hadar trees, branches of palm trees, boughs of leafy green of trees, and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before God for 7 days. So that is where we are right now, where we have, I'm going to actually take us off of that screen, and I'm going to get the various parts of my lulav and etrog for you to see and to explain what we just read. You're supposed to take these 4 bundles and bring them together, these 4 types of plant life. I think everyone is familiar with this because if you have experienced the holidays before at Temple Bethel or elsewhere, you're aware that this is the tradition. This is a slightly unusual kind of an lulav set. But what we have here is the spine here of a palm tree. I haven't taken these out of the package because I always want to keep them nice and fresh for the holiday. We don't actually do it tonight. We don't do it on Shabbat, but we will do it tomorrow. I'm sorry, on Sunday. And so you have the palm tree, which has this straight thing that when you shake it, it sounds like rain. You have the willow branch, which if you look at these leaves, you know that when they're out of water, they almost immediately wrinkle up and become dry. And you have the myrtle, which have these beautiful visuals that looks like eyes. They say this is eyes, this is lips, and this is like a spine. And then of course we have one more product. I'll do the joke that I did before. We have one more thing, a citrus fruit, a grapefruit. No, I'm just kidding. Not a grapefruit. We have this bizarre thing called an etrog. I think of the etrog really as being the thing, probably in a way, the most famous of all the citruses, because when you get absolute vodka called citron, that's what that is. That's citron. So the juice of that is used in the absolute vodka, I think. Mine is Israeli, but they also grow these in Morocco. And there's actually a farmer, an organic farmer up north, apparently, who does this. So I'm going to offer you an opportunity to ask questions and make this a little bit more of a discussion. And I'd love to hear, I see that Pamela and Irvin have their lulav and etrog set. I was asked by Elaine, is that 7 days in Israel and 8 days everywhere else? Yes, actually, it's kind of complicated. I'll try to go through it. It's 7 days. The holiday is 7 days, Shivat Yamim, 7 days. However, it says after the 7th day, there's this 8th day, which is called Atzeret, which is this extra day of the holiday. And we, on that day, it is actually technically not Sukkot. Shmini Atzeret is this extra holiday. Shmini, as in Shmona, meaning the 8th day, is this other holiday. And next week, because it'll land on Shabbat, we will be celebrating Shmini Atzeret. Now, just to make things even more complicated, and I didn't even understand this until I was in rabbinical school, and I already wanted to be a rabbi. So it took me a while to understand this. In the diaspora, on most diaspora holidays that are considered like festival days that are biblical, there's 2 days of each holiday. So on almost all, except there's an exception, which is Yom Kippur, which we're not going to talk about right now. But you have Passover, you'll have 2 days of Passover. That's why a lot of families will have 2 Passover Seders, because it's the first day, and then you have this extra day to make sure that you're on the right timing because of calendrical uncertainty outside of the land of Israel. In Israel, all these holidays, with the exception of Rosh Hashanah, Thank you, David. Just put it in there. With the exception of Rosh Hashanah, every other holiday is a one-day holiday. And that's because there's no question, and really in Jerusalem, I think there's debates about outside of Jerusalem, but in the land of Israel. But for the most part, what we have today is that if you're in the land of Israel, all these holidays, if it's a holiday, it's a one-day holiday. Now it's complicated because what do you mean it's a one-day holiday? I just said it's a 7-day holiday. There's the first day of Sukkot is considered a holy day, a moed, a designated time, a day where you cease from work. The first day is, but the rest of the days are not. But the first day outside of Israel, it becomes 2 days. So we have today and we have tomorrow. Is both today and tomorrow are today through tomorrow, and then tomorrow night through Sunday evening. They are both day one in a way of Sukkot. But we usually call it day one and day two, but actually it's 2 days of observing that first day that is considered a holy day. Does that make sense? No, I see heads nodding. You're allowed to unmute yourself if you have questions and if you could just be very direct. So the holiday is a 7-day holiday. The first day is considered a holy day. The other 6 days are not considered holy days, but they're called what we call Chol HaMoed, which is Chol and Moed. It's actually kind of one of the, what do we call it, an oxymoron? It's both Chol, which means secular or not a sacred day. It's a profane day, and it's a Moed. It's a designated day. So it's a little bit like a holiday, but sometimes in some ways it's not. And depending on where you're from, whether you're an Ashkenazic Jew or a Sephardic Jew, you might be observing it very differently. Sephardic Jews are much more about the Moed side of it. That is the more like holiday side of it. And the Ashkenazic Jews tend to be a little less strict on those days in terms of religious observance of the holiday. So those are the 7 days where day 1 and day 2 are essentially the same holy first day. But those 7 days, and then we have the 8th day, which is called Shemini Atzeret. Now, Shemini Atzeret is this 8th day of the holiday that follows the first 7 days, and that's why it's called Shemini, which means the 8th day. So 8 days from today, if today's the first day, the 8th day, if tonight is the beginning of the first day, then the 8th day begins a week from tonight. 1 plus 7 makes 8. So Friday night of next week will begin Shemini Atzeret. Now, just to make things more crazy, Shemini Atzeret is a 2-day holiday, just like Sukkot is a 2-day holiday. However, out in the diaspora. However, the second day of Shemini Atzeret outside of Israel is called, does anybody know? What's the second day of celebrating Shemini Atzeret?
Simchat Torah.
Yes.
That's what I was just going to say. Simchat Torah.
Simchat Torah is this other like expression. You'll notice it is not in the Torah. It's not listed as one of the holidays. It comes later, but it's essentially a celebration of rewinding the Torah to the beginning and starting over with the book of Genesis. And it's really, in essence, a second day of observance of Shemini Atzeret. Now, another thing that makes it very strange is that Shemini Atzeret is also the day that some people recite Yizkor prayers for remembering our loved ones. And next week, when we have our service, I will make a point of also showing the Yizkor. We'll do a little bit of Yizkor as well. It's a little bit out of alignment because it's on Shabbat, but I want to make sure that we have some observance and we're all isolated anyway. So what makes it extra strange is that if you're in Israel and you're observing Yizkor on Shemini Atzeret, And you're also observing only one day of Shmini Atzeret, namely that one day is also Simchat Torah. You go from Yizkor, which is a very solemn ritual of remembering our loved ones who we miss, to dancing with Torahs and getting drunk for many people in Israel. So it's a very strange juxtaposition. And it's just another way of recognizing that Simchat Torah came later, did not really fit into the structure that well, because it was made as a diaspora tradition as it is. And it just, they're trying to accommodate it in the land of Israel. Okay, questions, clarifications. What can I do for you? David, yes.
I actually have a comment to add to the confusion of 2 days. One of the reasons that the holidays were celebrated, the holidays, Chag, for 2 days outside of Israel is as you kind of alluded, there were some issues with time, exactly when you start it, when the holiday starts. So the holiday would be announced by lighting a big bonfire in Jerusalem, but up and down the eastern border of, or would be the western side of the Jordan in Israel, there are these mountains. And the people on the mountain would see the fire and light it and pass up the message on to the people farther away. So when you go up north, there's another mountain in the Jordan Valley. And then just north of Beit Shan is Kochava Yordain, the Star of the Jordan, where there's now a Crusader fortress, but they would use that as one of the fire points. And it went up a little farther and a little farther until the Hermon. I think it was the Hermon. I'm not sure about the Hermon, but the farther you went, it just meant longer for the fire to reach you or the message. So they extended it to 2 days. That's something I learned in Hebrew school. So if there's any blame about that particular meaning, you can go to LA Hebrew High School, find Elliot Dorff, or any of those guys, and we can blame them.
Thank you, Elliot Dorff. Thank you very much. Yes, so the calendrical uncertainties had to do with the delay that it took to send that message across lands. So any questions or clarifications? Because I do want folks to understand this. Marcia, you're shaking your head. Are you still totally confused? And if so, would you?
I don't know what to ask, actually.
You don't know what to ask?
No.
Okay. In the portion, there's a 7-day holiday. So what does the Torah say? The Torah says there's a 7-day holiday followed by this 8th day holiday. It's kind of a strange way it's written. It makes me think of the Newhart. What was it? The Newhart show? Hi, my name's Larry. This is my brother Daryl. This is my other brother Daryl. It's like, it doesn't really make sense, right? It's like, okay, there's a 7-day holiday and then there's the 8th day holiday. So is it the 8th day meaning that it's attached to those 7 days, or is it its own thing? So basically the tradition is that it is a completely separate holiday. Shemini Atzeret is a completely separate holiday, which means you don't sit in a sukkah. However, as is typical of the Jewish people, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, there are minhagim, there are customs to actually have certain celebration of it without the blessing in the sukkah. A number of Hasidic groups will celebrate Shemini Atzeret in a sukkah, even though the sukkah is no longer what the focus of the holiday is. There's this story that the people were having so much, or the angels were having so much fun with Sukkot, they didn't want it to end. They didn't want it to have an Atzeret. So, which is another word, la'atzor is basically to stop. So God looks at them and says, okay, I'll give you another day of celebration and of joy. And so that's where Shemini Atzeret came from. And we also call it Zman Simchatenu, the season of our joy, just like Sukkot is. So it's kind of Sukkot-ish and kind of not. So all that makes sense.
Sure.
That probably helped a little bit. And then that 2-day thing just makes things really hard to understand. So that's what I wanted to share about Sukkot, because I think it's just a lot to get under you. Let me just add one last thing, which will be the spiritual side of it, which is that the sukkah, which I'm in right now, is an extremely unsteady kind of, I think of it as ungepachka. I think I used that word at one point in my email. It's kind of half falling apart. And that's very much the way it's supposed to be. The roof in a traditional sukkah needs to be unattached, which means that if the winds came, it would literally blow the roof off. I don't have to worry about that much. We're in 90-degree weather here in LA, and also in Bakersfield. It's probably similar. So we're supposed to be in this fragile thing, and its fragility is a reminder of just how fragile it all is, how fragile the world is. And so in that sense, we really do have an extension of the high holidays, where we think about the fragility of our lives, and we think about just how thin it is. And then the absolute last thing I'll say about it, which means a lot to me, is the agricultural side of this. We know that Sukkot is a festival of harvest. On Sukkot, you read a Haftarah portion that deals entirely with the festival's harvesting. It's considered the Great Harvest. There are 3 harvest festivals, all of which are pilgrimage festivals to Israel to offer to God in the temple, and when the temple existed. But this one is seen as the biggest one, the most intense, with the biggest bounty and the most celebration. And in the book of Zechariah, there's these messianic visions of how the world will essentially be, that's built on this idea of harvest. And the horses have signs on them that say Kodesh Lashem, holy to God. It's this big prophetic vision, messianic vision of this perfect world. But it's also, in this harvest, a time where we're thinking about how fragile it is and how scared we are that the harvest might be the last one. We have a lot of fear that perhaps the rains won't come. So at the end of Sukkot, on Shemini Atzeret, which again is not really Sukkot, but they are connected, we have a prayer for rain. And that prayer is reinforced by us shaking the lulav, and the sound of rain, sort of symbolic magic. And so symbolic magic for wanting the rains to come. But we wait until after Sukkot because we don't want the rains to come before we're done celebrating Sukkot, because then we have rain in our sukkah, and who wants that? So we wait. But then on Shmini Atzeret, there's this rain component. So a big part of what this holiday is a recognition of how dependent we are on water, and how quickly our water can be lost, and how precarious our lives are. Just as the need for water is on a daily basis, we are grateful to a God that gives us life on a daily basis. And so that's really what I think is the agricultural, meaningful part of this holiday, that we are just grateful for being able to be. So I think I've shared far more than I needed to. I think we should continue our service with Misha Beirach, which can be found, if you wish, on page 253. And I was asked to recite a Misha Beirach prayer for our president as well. And I mentioned in the chat window that I will be mentioning his name as well. While we're not a political entity in our congregation, that we're not engaged in that, we have a very basic issue here, which is that we have a president who is in a very fragile condition right now, hospitalized. And so we obviously add our prayers for his refuah shlema as well, as part of our commitment to the United States as citizens. page 253. And I want to thank Mark for giving me names. And if others want to give names, please do. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make ourselves a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Charlotte Abrams, Amber Beeson, Patricia Bell, A.C. Brand, Charles Briefer, Irene Christensen, Pearl Davis, Larry Fish, Valerie Goss, Vicky Hugo, John Knight, Art McCombs, Jean Moore, Laura Reyes, Michal Roxon, Ann Silver, Howard Silver, Katie Stocks, President Trump, Polly Venita, Susan Wells, Deborah Hall, Barry Scheinberg, Lisa Peskin, Abby Peskin, Tim Arnold, Terry Arnold, Henry Levington, Melania Trump, need to get to all of our names. Enadina Barrera, Renee and Haley Schulman, Francis Anita, Herb and Eva Finkel, Stephen Schechter, all those struggling with COVID-19, and to all of our hearts that are aching from a world that feels very fragile right now. Me, Rose Blatt, bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Refuah Shlema to all of them, Victor Briggs, and to all those whose names were not mentioned as well. We wish them a complete and speedy recovery from their health challenges. And I want to also just acknowledge that we have two people who have been removed from our Mishe Beirach for reasons of healing, not for challenging things. Zeta Mitchell, thank you, Marcia. Helen Armistead and Marion Pickens are now off of the Mishe Beirach list, which is a good sign of good things happening. We now turn to a prayer for those who serve the community. And I'm not sure who will be leading that.
It's me.
It's
Pamela. I'm a substitute board person, a former board member.
not just a former board member, but a venerable president of the synagogue. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. You're welcome. A prayer for those who serve the community. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, and Rachel and Leah, bless this entire congregation together with all other holy congregations, their families and all that is theirs, along with those who devote themselves to establish synagogues for prayer, well as those who enter them to pray, and those who provide for their maintenance, wine for Kiddush and Havdalah, food for their guests, bread for the hungry, tzedakah for the poor, and shelter for the homeless, and all who faithfully devote themselves to the needs of this community and to the land of Israel. May the Holy One reward them, remove sickness from them, heal them, and forgive their sins. May God bless them by making all their worthy endeavors prosper, as well as those of the entire people Israel, their brothers and sisters, and let us say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. We now turn in our books to page 282 for Aleinu L'Shabeach. Please rise as you are able. Unfortunately, the orientation is the wrong direction here for good sound, but we'll do what we can. Aleinu L'Shabeach, page 282. Aleinu L'Shabeach L'Adon HaKol, L'Tet Gedula Le'yotzer Breshit, Shelo Asanu Kegei Haratzot, Velo Samanu K'mishpachot Ha'adama, Shelo Sam Chelkenu Kahem, V'goralenu Kechol Hamonam, V'anachnu Korim, U'mishtachavim U'modim, Lifnei Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Let the time not be distant, O God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. O may all created in your image become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol ha'aretz bayom hahu. Bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo, u'shemo, u'shemo echad. Please be seated. We turn now to a reading that is found on page 290, and I want to welcome Karen Briefer to lead us in this reading. Where is Karen? Oh, there.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We see you, but it looks like Halloween.
My favorite holiday. Hold on. Well, this isn't much better because it's dark. Here, let's do Halloween again.
Okay.
Okay. Why should I wish to see God better than this day? I see something of God in each hour of the 24, and each moment then. In the faces of men and women I see God, and in my own face in the glass. I find letters from God dropped in the street, and every one is signed by God's name, and I leave them where they are, for I know that wheresoever I go, others will punctually come forever and ever.
Thank you. Each week as we recite Kaddish, we do so for the 6 million and all victims of the Shoah, people who have died in acts of terrorism, war, and natural disaster. We say Kaddish for Jews throughout history who have us to say Kaddish for them. And each week, too, we share with our community the losses that we have recently experienced. If you're in a first week of mourning and would like to mention a name, please do so now. Unmute yourself and share that name with us.
Marianne Hunsdorfer, she passed away today, a longtime friend of mine.
Sorry for your loss. We also say Kaddish for loved ones of those in Shloshim, those in the first month of mourning. If you're in Shloshim and would like to share a name, we would be grateful for that as well. I also want to share that Sylvia and I have another sister whose lifelong partner has reached a stage of health where he's still alive, but he will very shortly pass. He's in just a very fragile condition, and so we know that next week we will be saying Kaddish for him as well. And we say Kaddish for those we've lost earlier this year in this first year of mourning. Morgan Patton, fiance of Phil Brandon. Carol Wilkes, mother of Tara Klein. David Allen Goodman, brother of Vicky Hugo. Sam Young, father of Robert Young. Stephen Crowley, dear friend of Eileen Schechter. Lou D'Annucci, uncle of Eileen Schechter. William Tyler, loving partner of Etta Robin. Maria Agustina Richardson, mother of Lori Larrabus. Don Reifenstahl, the father of Becky Reifenstahl and father-in-law of Beth Spiegel. Jose Peralta, uncle of Rosa Barrera. Deborah Weiss, sister of Mark Schulman. Rabbi Stanley Robin, former rabbi of Temple Bethel, former husband of Etta Robin, and father of Deborah Frank and Daniel Robin. William Palmer, father of Debbie Rosenthal and father-in-law of Philip Rosenthal. Melvin Wallace, the grandfather of Eitan Wallace. And Sandy Eglund, sister-in-law of Jill Eglund and aunt of Amelia Eglund. Is there anyone else from this year who we've lost? And on the community yahrzeit list, the anniversary of their passing, Jewel Potter, stepmother of Alexander Potter, Zichrono Livracha. Shirley Paulin, the grandmother of Loria, great-grandmother of Amanda Garza, and great-great-grandmother of Reese. And I was so blessed this week to get pictures of Shirley and see who she was. What a lovely woman. Many of you, I think, knew her along the way. Norma Doris, mother of Gail Magnus and grandmother of Elliot Magnus. Sylvia and my mother, Lila Klein. Bonnie Yosh, friend of Karen Briefer. Thank you, Karen. Marvin Lipko, husband of Shirley Lipko Baker and father of Sharon Lipko Zichrona Livracha and Lisa Levine. And Louis Leventhal, uncle of Howard Leventhal, Zichrono Livracha, and Norman A. Potter Sr., the father of Alexander Potter, Zichrono Livracha. Are there other names of yard sites that we're commemorating that were?
Kajan Ephraim Shohan, Florence Bayless Patty, Pinka Sweinbach, Lizzie Lerner, William Boss, Alexander Kushner.
Thank you, Howard. If it's your custom or you choose to, please rise for Kaddish, which you can find on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah ve'alma dibrachute v'amlich malchute v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'la'almei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei t'kudesha b'richu le'elat min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata ta'amiram be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabbah min shmaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, and to which we say, Amen. So we are coming into the close of our service, our Sukkot Shabbat service, the SSS. And we turn back now to Shabbat for a moment. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharetz, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Kadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. One tradition that I did not share with you about Sukkot, but I'd like to share with you now, is the idea that you invite people into your sukkah. And there's some very specific people that you invite according to the tradition. There is a tradition that you invite 7 guests on each of the 7 nights, where the pattern is to follow the Kabbalistic pattern, which is to go from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, Moses, Aaron, Joseph, and David. And some will change that order slightly. Just there are a couple of different traditions there. You may be asking, well, what about the women? So we also have traditions that appeared over time. One from a man named Menachem Azariah, the Ramah of Fano, who also had 7 female ushpizin, that's the term for guests. And they are Sarah, in this order, Sarah, Miriam, and each when I say in this order, it means tonight being the first night, we have the first guest. Tomorrow would be the second guest as the highlighted guest. Although the tradition is kind of that they're all there all nights. So tonight is Sarah, then comes Miriam, Deborah, Hannah, Abigail, Huldah, and Esther. Now, I'm going to say to all of you that if you don't know who some of those people are, you better learn, because they are important women in the history of the Jewish people, and we need to elevate their voices as well. So there you go. The conservative movement has a different order in Israel. They have the order of Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. You might expect that, followed by Miriam, Elisheva, and Bathsheba. I want to just say the welcoming blessing or tradition. You say, enter exalted holy ones, enter exalted holy patriarchs and matriarchs, to be seated in the shade of exalted faithfulness, in the shade of the Holy One of blessing. Enter Abraham, the beloved one, Isaac, the bound one, Jacob, the wholesome one, Joseph, Moses, the faithful servant, Aaron, the holy Kohen or priest, Joseph, the righteous one, and David, the anointed king. In Sukkot you shall dwell 7 days. Be seated, exalted guests, be seated. Be seated, guests of faithfulness. Be seated in the shade of the Holy One of blessing. Worthy is our portion, worthy is the portion of Israel, as it is written, for God's portion is God's people, Jacob the lot of God's heritage. So it goes on and ends with, may it please you, Jacob, my exalted guest, and today it would be Abraham, my exalted guest, that all the other exalted guests dwell here with me and with you. Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Aaron, Joseph, and David. So if we were together in the sukkah at Temple Bethel, I would be asking you who you would want to be in your sukkah. And to really, and we would go around, and we don't have time to do that tonight, but I want you to think about who are the guests that you want to have. Maybe people from your life now, maybe people who have influenced you that you've never met along the way. But these people are our matriarchs and patriarchs, the people who shaped our tradition, who made us who we are as a people. And so the question becomes, who are the people who have made you who you are? I would say that for me personally, having lost my mother in the course of Sukkot, I would always want my mother to be here, all the more so because of her passing in this time. But I think we all have those special ushpizin, those special guests. And by the way, the word ushpizin, which is Aramaic for guests, has in it the word hospice, which is the Latin word for guest, as in hospitality, as in there's an order, I think, of Catholics called the Hospital or something along those lines. I'm not an expert in that. But I will say that this idea of ushpizin really comes as loan language from that. So anyway, that is that tradition. I wanted to make sure we touched on it. And now it's time for the holiday Kiddush. So if you have your wine, I will recite the blessing. If I can read it. I want you to be able to see me too. Okay. And this blessing will be followed with Shechianu and also a special blessing for sitting in the sukkah. So I'm doing it all. And I'm using my unbreakable wine Kiddush cup, also made by Corksicle. Savri, yo. Ba'erev Yavoker Yom HaShishi. Savri. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher bachar banu mikol ha'am v'romamanu mikol hashon v'kichanu b'mitzvotav v'atiten lanu Adonai Eloheinu be'ahava Shabbatot limnucha moadim l'simcha chagim uzmanim l'sason et yom HaShabbat hazeh ve'et yom chag HaSukkot hazeh zman simchatenu, season of our joy, be'ahava, with love, mikra kodesh, zecher litziat mitzrayim, ki banu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim, be'shabbat u'moadei kodshecha, be'ahava uvratzon besimcha uvsason hinchaltanu, baruch ata Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat v'Yisrael v'Hazmanim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu leishev b'sukkah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. L'chaim, l'chaim. Let's cancel the spotlight and let's say hamotzi together. If you have challah, grab it, unmute yourself so we can be together. Tara? Oh, just missed her.
Nice holla.
Get your calls, everybody.
Thank you. I had some help.
Yes, Mark.
Oh, that
looks great.
Mark, you have your special call? Nice.
Hi, Linda.
Nice.
And yes, he knows how to make a round challah.
You know what, Mark?
Wow.
You just got recruited to lead us in it. So I'm going to spotlight you. And you're going to lead us in Motzi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Mark, what do you have on that challah?
I have cinnamon, nutmeg, raisins, and poppy seeds.
Oh, it looks delicious.
It does.
And it's beautiful too.
Thank you very much.
It is.
Like mushrooms on
And holla.
Who made it?
I did.
Nice, Mark. Very
No,
nice.
excuse me. I had help.
Yeah,
Rosa and I made it.
Oh, nice.
And this is the first challah, so don't eat it.
Don't eat it. Preserve it.
So let's sing one last song. We'll do a return to the song that we started with, V'samachta b'chagecha, and it says V'hayita ach sameach. You should be only happy. Please, God, make it that way. Please, may we have more happiness. Oh wait, what is this weird thing?
It's good.
That call looks really good. Am I visible?
It's not bad.
Let's do it. V'samach b'chagecha v'hayita ach sameach v'samachta v'hayita ach sameach v'samachta b'chagecha v'hayita ach sameach v'samachta b'chagecha Hayita'ach Sameach. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach to everybody.
Shabbat Shalom. Keep safe and healthy, everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hello. Have a wonderful, safe, healthy week. And Rabbi, thank you for another wonderful service.
Oh, it was wonderful. Thank you, Rabbi. It was just wonderful.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach.
Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Have a good evening.
You
too.
Bye. David Bruss there. Yay. Shabbat Shalom. Good to see you. Terry. All sorts of good people.
Shabbat Shalom,
Don't
Rabbi, and
forget-
everyone else. Great service.
And join us tomorrow at 6 o'clock for the Pirkei Avot study
Yes.
right here.
And you have some kind of cooking class or something?
Sunday.
Sunday. Is that
Okay.
Sylvia? Yeah,
Yes.
Sylvia, you're always welcome. Come join us.
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. And it's the same Zoom number.
Okay.
Can we get a grocery list?
It's if you RSVP, you get an email with all kinds of good information, Mark.
Who do we RSVP to?
Well, it's a Watby. It's Sisterhood Watby, but it's open to men and women. So,
He wants to know the email address.
yeah, it is
WOTBE.
Sisterhood, SISTER